What an absolute toxic garbage message from a credit card company. Yeah, because I need to go watch my nature on the television while I'm at the beach in nature. Escape from your life by buying things. No! Hey y'all, I'm Shauna. Welcome in or welcome back to the channel. Today we are back on Reddit and we're going to be reacting to the r/anti-consumption subreddit. I love the subreddit. I love coming in here and checking it out every so often. Y'all like these videos too. So if you'd like to see more of Reddit reacts, leave a peach. We did peaches last time. I like the fruit theme. Leave a peach in the comments. I want to get into it right away. No funny business. We're just diving right in. It's aggressive. And I first want to talk about this Starbucks article, or this article about Starbucks. So this says, Starbucks sales tumble as customers reject high-priced coffee. There's tons of comments on this and a very popular post in the forum over the last few days. What the article is saying is that sales have dropped 3% for stores open for more than a year, and in their home North American market, sales have dropped by about 2%. The stock is down 19% over the past year, which is a lot. They're kind of also comparing to McDonald's, that McDonald's is also down. Starbucks is down a little bit more than McDonald's over this past quarter. And some of what the article is saying is responsible for this are competitions from other drive-through based coffee companies and people making coffees at home. And so what Starbucks is doing to win back customers is like a value picks kind of thing, or what they're doing is like a pairing menu. You get a drink and a breakfast sandwich for $5 or $6. I think that's only happening in the US because I went to go look on the Starbucks app to see like what's what, and I haven't seen this. It sounds like it's already out because they're saying that it's working. And I have not seen this. Like it's not on the Starbucks Canada app. It could be something that's only happening in the US or starting off in the US and then coming to Canada eventually. It might not ever come here. What is currently like on offer besides the regular buy X drink, get stars kind of thing is a sale on iced coffee. I'll put a screenshot. A tall is $3, a grande is $3.50, a venti is $4. Grande, like their most popular beverage size, is a discount of 75 cents. Like we couldn't give people full dollar discount. It's kind of funny that this article is like, yes, people are making coffee at home and people are like, there's other rival drive-through options, which is like, yeah, sure, but it's so much more complicated than that. So I went to go check a drink that I like, an iced brown sugar oat shaken espresso. It's not super fancy. It sounds kind of fancy, but it's not that fancy. A tall with no modifications is $7.06. Here we go. Here's my little guy. $7.06 is so expensive. Like, this article is not like really framing the market as it is, or the fact that Starbucks is casually charging $7 for a tall beverage. The prices are insane. And when you go to the subreddit, some of the like top comments are people kind of happy that these big chains are like finally hitting their tipping point, which just might be the case. And one of the reasons for this tipping point is like grocery prices are moderating, but prices for takeout or convenience items are still increasing. But also when you compare that with like other cost of living things like housing or rent or salaries, like sure, food might be moderating, but your $7 coffee in conversation with your $3,000 rent, or like your, average salary in Canada is $63,000 a year. Approximately, like it's all so expensive, and like so is the coffee. So yeah, I think a lot of people are going to make their coffee at home because $7 isn't accessible for people anymore. And I also think part of this conversation is or part of who buys coffee are people who buy Starbucks for treats. A lot of people will get their little Starbucks drink every so often. I was somebody who'd buy about one drink every 3-ish months, 3-4 months, something like that. Once you break that 5, like it's like, oh, I gotta give a $10 over for my treat. Like $10 for a tall beverage or $7 for a tall beverage is like, the price just doesn't justify this. It's not a little treat anymore. It's expensive for the little treat. And so I think the little treat people are just not a little treat anymore. This is like a big treat comparatively to what it was. One thing somebody else has said, which I'm going to read a lot of this comment because I think it's really great, and you'll see it on the screen. They're saying is that what's been happening over the last 10 years is that these companies have slowly been raising their prices, and they're raising it that they finally find out what their tipping point is. So if you raise it above this tipping point, people will stop coming because it's too expensive. And that's what's happening now. It's too expensive as well in the context of life right now. They might start offering deals like McDonald's, which they've already kind of said that they're doing. It's like the psychological phenomenon where gas was priced at about $5 a gallon a few years ago. When it went down to $4.25 a gallon, all of a sudden everybody was excited that the prices had dipped down that low, when it should be half that price if you took extreme corporate greed out of the equation. If their $5 black coffees go down to $4 for a while, people might think that's a great deal without thinking about the wider picture. They might stay in a holding pattern for a little while after they walk back their prices, but a year or two from now, the prices are going to slowly creep back up just a little bit at a time until they're back up to where they are now. I'm not sure that they are going to lower their prices. To be honest, I feel like they're going to try and ride it out. But I also think that part of what's happening with Starbucks that I haven't seen mentions of in this context yet is its public perception. Over the past year in specific, with Starbucks union busting and also suing the union, I also think that there's, I don't know, maybe this is my own bias creeping in, but I think that there is a bit of people just being more frustrated than ever with corporate greed, and Starbucks is not immune to that. I think when we look at something that's more affordable, like in the Canadian context, Tim's stores are mostly franchised. Prices are set, but they are still franchised, so corporate greed doesn't quite look the same. But also, even if it was, the prices are more affordable in the context that ideas of corporate greed don't hit the same as a company like Starbucks. And I think public perception with Starbucks have gone down over the last year with their union busting, which has gone on longer. But also, a lot of people have been boycotting Starbucks since October 2023 due to their perceived ties with Israel. I was doing some reading from the organization Canadians for Justice and Peace in the Middle East, and they have a great article on Starbucks and the Starbucks boycott. So in their article, which I will link because it's a good article, they talk about how Starbucks' financial ties and support for Israel aren't exactly what they seem. They don't have direct financial support to Israel, and they also haven't had a store operating in Israel since the early 2000s. There are ways that supporting Starbucks could have more roundabout financial implications. Some of their shareholders, again, you can read the article. But what I think is maybe the bigger picture for this is Starbucks claims to be politically neutral, which is I hate when corporations attempt to be politically neutral in situations that are so egregious. At this point, it's been egregious since October, but at this point, you have the International Criminal Court stating that very clearly about the genocide that has been perpetrated by Israel. Why are we politically neutral about genocide? So that's already trash, and I get people being upset about that. But Starbucks, they initiated a lawsuit against unionized employees that made a tweet that says solidarity with Palestine. Starbucks accused the union of showing support for violence perpetrated by Hamas and claimed that the lawsuit was necessary to protect itself against the unauthorized use of its name and logo. In response, the union accused Starbucks of seeking to exploit the ongoing tragedy in Gaza and Israel to bolster an anti-union campaign by falsely attacking the union's reputation with workers and the public. Inevitably, Starbucks' mistreatment of the union has been widely viewed as a form of retaliation against support for Palestine, and many people have therefore decided that the company does not deserve their business. They're not really wrong. So in this context, Starbucks might not have overt ties to Israel, but this whole situation and how they handled it was not cool for a lot of people. So when you look at the context, it's not just like, oh yes, there's more competition and people are budgeting. Like it's way more complicated than that. Let's move on to a quick one. I was going to post this video or make this video a couple months back or a couple weeks back, and I saved this so it's not as fresh anymore. This one is AT&T will now let you upgrade your phone 3 times a year for a fee. We see the problem with this, right? How much waste that is. The only people I can conceivably think about needing a new phone 3 times a year could be phone reviewers. I really want to say who needs a phone replaced 3 times a year. I'm trying to think through the lenses. This is so wasteful. I'm truly racking my brain to figure out who needs to replace their phone 3 times a year. This is so excessive and wasteful. Let's not. We can move on. This also is an older one that I couldn't. Just makes me laugh. McDonald's unveiled this design of a table, like their takeout bags turning into tables that you can bring with you. The person who left this comment on the anti-consumption Reddit thread said, "Get in, losers, disposable tables just dropped." So the whole concept of this is your McDonald's bag turns into a table so you could eat anywhere. And like maybe design-wise, that's cool. Like it's cool that it could do that and that it could support the weight of your drinks and your fries and your burgers or whatever. We don't need this overall. Like maybe this could potentially be an accessibility tool, which like could perhaps be nice to like offer as like something you could order instead of something that becomes the norm. All bags come with a table if you order at this store, or like if you order takeout, period. From my understanding, this is not meant to be something that like you custom request. This is meant to be like served with their takeout I think this was happening in Rome or something. All of the people who order takeout at this specific location. So in that context, we're producing like more single-use cardboard or paper products, which this also looks like it's going to have the coating on it. You can't recycle paper coffee and drink cups because they have the coating on it. If this also has the coating on it, then you are making products that could be recyclable, not recyclable. And so now we're just making stuff to throw, like more single-use stuff to throw in the trash. I also saw this post. This one, again, was from like early July, and it says Halloween ads in July. I've also seen some of this stuff organically. I got a Michaels ad 2 weeks ago, like mid-July, and it was for Halloween products. I think that there is an extremely small subset of people who are, because I have seen people who do this, like who have more, maybe like witchy aesthetics. There's certain people who live for Halloween, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Those people, like, that's their aesthetic all year long. And so they like those things all year long, or they might like go all out for Halloween. So I think there's a very small subset of people who are like, yes, this is my vibe, this is my aesthetic, I'm buying it now. However, I actually think that this is done not with the intention actually of selling you something right now, but getting you more mentally prepared for it. Yes, Halloween is coming. And we talked about in a recent video about exposure, being exposed to stuff. Halloween is short-lived, that if they are able to, let's say, create an exposure from like to get people buying stuff, let's say mid-September even, instead of just a couple weeks before Halloween or all in October, there is a chance of, increasing revenue and making sales. So if they start getting you in July, they've in essence like expanded their advertising season. So when you get into proper fall, mid-September, or maybe beginning of September, it feels less ludicrous to start thinking about Halloween. Does that make sense? That's what I think this is. You think it's crazy now, but they're like giving you that exposure. September rolls around and you're like, oh yes, like now it's much more reasonable to buy Halloween stuff when it still might be like early. The next one is an advertisement from somebody who's on the tube from a credit card company that says, there's a little holiday in the things you buy. What an absolute toxic garbage message from a credit card company. Buying stuff to take a holiday is, I don't know. I'm trying to do the mental gymnastics here. It's not happening. This is such a gross message because this is like publicly in the tube, and it's cementing the link between shopping and dopamine. Like, get the dopamine hit every time you buy something. And also what they've done is they've turned things into enjoy the act of buying opposed to like enjoy the thing that you buy, which is why this message is gross. There's a little holiday in the things that you buy. I guess maybe you could interpret that as enjoying the thing once it comes. But in my opinion, it's more about the dopamine hit. Enjoy the pleasure that it gives you. Or even worse, holidays tend to give people an escape from their life in many contexts. Escape from your life by buying things. No. Somebody in the comments says, yeah, every time you buy something, you lose a little more of your holiday. And if they, like, this is a credit card company, so obviously they financially benefit from you buying more stuff, and that's what they want you to do. They have the incentive of you using your credit card. So yeah, when you're buying stuff, like, you're not saving your money. And what they want you to do is buy stuff because saving money means you're not using their service. We also have a one-time phone charger from Korea. People are speculating that it's possible for like the battery in here to actually be a rechargeable one. So it's actually gross that this is a one-time phone charger. One-time phone chargers, in my opinion, should not exist. They should not exist. So people in the comments are speculating that this is a lithium ion battery, which means that it would be rechargeable. So the fact that this is not even like, you've made the thing, right? You could advertise it as rechargeable, but it's not. The amount of labor that goes into mining lithium is wild. And so like you're going through all of this labor, all of this resource extraction to then like encourage people to throw it away. Somebody else mentioned all of the metals and other like electronic components of this that are also not going to be reused or recycled. It's just gross. Like, no, we can do better. Can't believe I'm saying this. These are ads on a boat. Like, this is a boat ad that drives close to the shore by a beach so people take in the ad while they're at the beach. And then when the ads aren't playing, nature scenes are being played. Yeah, because I need to go watch my nature on the television while I'm at the beach in nature. Who did this? Not only are these ads disrupting people's time at the beach, disrupting nature, they're forcing people to consume ads when they are attempting to be away from the screens. Let's now force screens onto people when they are attempting to be away from it. Then you have a boat, right, that runs on gas, diesel, whatever, that's now in the lake or the ocean. I'm not exactly sure where this is, polluting the ocean or the lake to serve people ads that they don't actually want. We see the absurdity, right? All right, here's another one that I really want to talk about because it reminds me of some of the other content that we make on this channel, and there's a great discussion in these comments. So the question that this person is asking, this subreddit, is how do I organize my deep fridge without buying into Amazon consumerism? So they say, this is one of my first attempts trying to be anti-consumption after I stumbled upon this subreddit and realized how social media has programmed many of us to normalize buying unnecessary, expensive plastic. I want my fridge to be organized so I can see, find, reach everything, even in the back, and this would be an ideal product. But I'm looking for any solutions to use other household items instead, or maybe some organizing hacks to reduce produce waste. Thanks. The first commenter, which has 1.6 thousand upvotes, you just exemplified the main misconception when people think about anti-consumption. It's not about refusing to buy literally anything that would ever make your life a bit better, and buying some really useful containers that will last you for decades isn't consumerism, it's just improving your life. Oh, but it's plastic, surely it can't last that long. Well, your fridge's drawers and walls are most likely plastic, so those containers can last as long as your fridge does. Somebody says yes to all this, but you don't need to shop from Amazon. Somebody else mentioned it's good to DIY organization supplies before buying them though, because a lot of the time you learn as you go. So I think OP's approach is still correct in that they need to know exactly what they're looking for rather than just, I need fridge organization, let me Google that term and buy what comes up. People end up cycling through like an average of 3 different rounds of buying this kind of stuff before they figure out what works for them. And I have thoughts on this. I personally think that like the concept of fridge organization has come into a lot of people's consciousness because of social media. Would you personally have thought of organizing your fridge with plastic containers if you had not stumbled on YouTube videos or TikToks? I'm not entirely sure that I would have. I think there's probably so many of you who would at least like search for something and then you'd be like, oh yes, maybe stumble upon it organically. But I think many of us have, or this need or this desire to organize our fridge, which isn't inherently a bad thing to organize your fridge or organize anything. But many of us have stumbled upon this desire because we're seeing it on TikTok, or we're seeing this area of our homes become transformed into something aesthetic that also has a layer of use value to it. So my initial point is that I think that there is a chance that this desire generally comes from a place of consumer culture. As this person says, that you could organize your fridge and you could own these things for years, and that's not inherently overconsumption. But what I think happens with a lot of people who do attempt, or at least some of the people who do attempt to organize their fridge or other spaces, is that these organizational attempts are short-lived and they don't have the longevity that people assume that they have, or that they would like to have. And then they end up decluttering some of their products along the way. And some of this waste or some of this decluttering, I think, happens because of what people have mentioned, is that people get this desire or feel this need, and then they're not really sure what's going to work, or they buy stuff that they maybe seen, or just the stuff that's easiest to access, instead of fully understanding like what their needs are. And so then there's this like buy and declutter as people try to figure it out. So I do like the approach of using what you have first, seeing like what works and learning from that. I know for me, one of the things that I did was I used pickle jars and tomato sauce jars to organize some stuff. I've used shoe boxes before to kind of figure out what sizes and stuff works. Quite often the times where I just like bought a solution that was easily accessible or something that looked like it was for organizational purposes didn't last. One of the most notable was a drawer divider. It's like a long piece of plastic, quite often, maybe bamboo, and then you like wedge it between drawers, like lengthwise. And people usually do maybe like 2 in a drawer, so you could like line up your stuff in like 3 separate compartments. I hated that. It did not jive with how I function. I do have an organizational system now that I've used for a year and plan to, and was somewhat customizable. And I actually like my partner assembled his first, and I kind of saw what was going on in his closet and made tweaks for mine, and it works great. So it's not as though there's no use for organizational supplies, period. I have, I've organized my desk and that with containers, and I've had that for a year, maybe a little bit longer, and that works great. But it's comes from a place of, I think, like knowing yourself and what your specific needs are. And so some people have also mentioned like using Pyrex containers, using glass containers of different shapes instead of plastic, maybe using a lot of bowls. When we see stuff happening on social media, it can lead us to certain conclusions, right? Like these plastic containers, when if you were to, let's say, use bowls in your fridge, just as an example, because you use what you have first, you might realize that that's ultimately the better solution for you. And often when you experiment, like you'll learn stuff along the way. Maybe none of your containers work that you try, or none of the stuff that you try to make on your own or use what you have. Let's say 100% of it doesn't work. You've now learned something. Whatever size or shape of your container, how you use stuff, the space it takes up in your fridge, you've learned something, which I think is more knowledge than you could have potentially had you just gone in and blindly purchased the first thing you saw on Amazon. We're going to end on this discussion, which is a post discussion about owning more stuff than that's needed. So this person asks, what items do you have more than what you know are needed? Their example are sunglasses. The full post is going to be on the screen, and plants are their big exceptions. That they lose their sunglasses a lot. They drive a lot. And so they're very forgetful. So it makes sense for them to own many pairs. And they also really like plants because they make them happy and proud. It's a hobby that brings them joy. This is, I think, a really interesting question for this community, because this in part goes to the hobby thing. I think hobbies are super easy to overspend on. And often, like when we have a hobby, it's quite normal us to own more than baseline or more than, bare minimum or necessary purposes, utilitarian purposes only. Many people are okay owning more than the baseline because of the hobby, right? Well, makeup, I own more than I actually need to do a full face of makeup. I think for a lot of people, the question is more of like how much is too much, or how little is too little, where there isn't enough novelty. I have struggled with this a lot. I used to own like 300 products, and I think last time I did an inventory was something like 150, maybe something like that. I think my sweet spot, my usable spot, is probably somewhere around 80. And I don't buy much makeup anymore, and I'm still, kind of going through and trying to finish stuff that from the past. And I do think that like my threshold is lower than what I thought it was a few years ago, because I am more utilitarian with makeup, but I'm definitely not as utilitarian as somebody who just wants to do a singular face of makeup. So I think about this question a ton. And one of the things I saw repeated throughout people in this comment thread saying books. A lot of people love owning books, and they don't want to own a bare minimum of books. I totally understand that one as well. So I'm wondering for you, what is the thing that owning more than what is necessary brings you like joy and happiness, but also makes sense? So I would like to hear your thoughts. The houseplants kind of struck me because I do actually get comments quite often, more than I ever anticipated, about my plants. All of the plants, Juicy, here, I have a couple more back there. I haven't purchased any of them. The only one I've purchased is this guy. Majority of these, actually, can we see them? So this cactus right here, that one is from my partner. Everything else, these four are all from my brother. I got them when he was moving. I don't buy plants. I, of course, own more than I could need. I love when people buy me plants. And also, many of these weren't actually bought for me. They were just given. Some of them were bought. I love when people buy me plants. Like, I love having a memory of a person attached to a thing like this, but that can also be kind of shitty if the thing dies. Like, you killed the thing that somebody gave you. Now that I have all of these plants, like I I love seeing them. Like they make my heart happy, as this poster was saying. So in the event that, let's say, I moved or they all died, I probably would purchase more plants. Probably. Because they just like, they brighten up the place. And I also kind of like decor that's functional or maybe like purposeful. You know, I could have knickknacks here or something, but instead I have plants, living, breathing entities, which is better than like a glass elephant or something, in my opinion, anyways. So that's the video. I would like to hear your thoughts on all the posts that we mentioned today. I left the discussions to the end, so other stuff are, of course, discussions, but these are posts that were, created with the intention of soliciting feedback and opinions on the subject matter. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on the stuff that you have that's more than necessary, and also what you think about this like organizational fridge discussion. Very curious to hear your thoughts. Thanks so much for watching, hanging out with me today. Love if you would subscribe to catch more content like this, and I hope to see you again around here soon. Bye.